I look at your activities without even looking at your personal statement. I want to invite you for an interview because I see someone who's passionate. Mission accepted, season 3. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Gray.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited to have you. Thank you for coming on, sharing your story. You are a recently accepted student, and as we'll look at your application. Congratulations on your acceptance.
Thank you. Again, thrilled to be on this part of the web series.
Yes, versus the other one. Yes.
Yeah.
Poor. Yeah. Um, what do you think led to your success as we'll kind of potentially see here as an early decision applicant? And I get this question a lot. Dr. Gray, do you recommend early decision? I'm like, for a very select few people. What do you think led to your success during this process?
I got that feedback too when I said I was applying early decision. People said, well, we don't really recommend that if you want to go to medical school. And I said, I very much want to go, but I'm not the only person whose wants need to be taken into consideration in my life. So I think that I had a cogent story, and I think I was a good mission fit for my state school.
And so here's where it's funny. I have no idea what cogent means, but it sounds like it's important.
Yes, it goes together. I'm 131 vocabulary.
Yeah, as we'll see on that CARS, that MCAT score is pretty outstanding. So awesome. And early decision, you said it's not just me going through this process. Why early decision for you?
Really, I have moved away before, and when I have 2 children, and when my children were younger, I went to grad school in Southern California, which was wonderful, and they were younger. To be honest, my son is starting middle school, and middle school is so hard, and the idea of making him change schools in the 7th grade was, I couldn't do it. I thought, well, if not my local school this year, then I'll consider moving down the line. But this year, only here.
Okay. Yeah.
I loved my school. I thought, I could make it work with a school that's only, an hour away, but I really like this school.
No, that's awesome. And it obviously worked out. So great job. All right. So let's look at your application as a non-traditional student, obviously with a middle schooler, which is fantastic, and see what helped you get in early decision, even though people are like, yeah, maybe not. And we can talk about why I typically don't recommend early decision unless, again, very specific types of students, which it sounds like you are one of those. So great job. All right. First thing I always love to highlight, when did you submit your application? You submitted mid-June, which is perfect. Right? Was it first day? You don't have to be first day people, but you submitted in June, which is wonderful. Then looking at, and let me ask you, because you were early decision, did you feel extra pressure to get it in as fast as possible?
Well, I kind of did, but then I found out after I submitted it that early decision applications are processed nearly immediately. It took 20 minutes for mine to be processed. And then I told everyone I knew. So I was like, look, you don't have to stress too much.
Wow. So they kind of move you to the front of the line.
Yeah, that's it. I hadn't realized that. I hadn't read it anywhere. I think because there's such a small population of students that are applying early decision, that there's just not a ton of information about that.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And it's let me say this carefully for everyone watching and listening. Do not mark your application early decision just to get processed sooner, because you just don't want to play that game. We go through your demographic info. Most of it's redacted out, but we have some languages, which is great. And then we have looking at SES disadvantaged. We have marked as yes, and again, that is an automatic qualification from the AAMC based on parent information, which we have redacted out. And then for you, disadvantage is marked as no. And then we keep going. No big red flags, no military service, all great. All right, and then we get to grades. And we see, non-trad a few years ago, going through this process. And we look at grades, and we see some C, an F, a withdrawal. Were you pre-med starting college?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Yeah, no. Okay.
I was a
Interesting.
biology major because I liked biology.
Okay.
I honestly thought I would possibly go PhD maybe
Mm.
someday. I hadn't really thought it through.
Okay. So just playing the game. All right. So some early struggles and often struggles going through this process.
Well, that whole semester was a loss there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was pregnant with my son and
Ah.
I was vomiting like 3 times a day.
Yes.
And I thought I could make it work. The reason I withdrew from the organic chemistry lab was I asked the instructor, I said, I just found out I'm pregnant. Is this safe? And she said, oh, absolutely not. Um, so, so I withdrew from the lab, but I
Okay.
thought I could make it work with the other classes, and I couldn't. I I didn't have comprehensive health insurance at the time, and so this like $4 generic Zofran was just out of reach, right? Because I didn't have anyone who could prescribe it,
Yeah.
and I didn't make it work. I was too sick to go to classes.
Yeah. And this was I'm trying to think back to when ACA went into effect. This is right around that time.
It went into effect right before my daughter was born, almost 3 years later.
Okay.
So, um, which it was great for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that semester,
Yeah.
I tried. I realized later I should have asked more questions about what my university could have done for me because there was so much.
Yeah.
I could have taken all incompletes and finished it later. They would have let me do that. I could have medically withdrawn even after the fact with
Yep.
with correct documentation. I just didn't look into it. I was really ashamed that I couldn't manage, and I ended up just taking my fails and giving
Yeah.
up, kind of.
Yeah. And obviously you have an acceptance. It didn't hurt you. And for everyone else who is in a similar situation, whether you're in that situation now, withdraw, talk to the registrar, figure out what your options are. And if you're past this situation, still contact the registrar and go, "Hey, I'm applying to medical school. All of my grades really matter. Here's what happened during the semester. What is your late withdrawal policy?" And there are schools out there, and this may be one of them. Your school here, although again, it's not important for you anymore. There are schools out there that will have a procedure in place and policies in place for you to appeal and go, "Here's why I struggled during that semester. Here is why I didn't do anything because I was young and dumb and whatever and throwing up all the time. Can you please put my kind of story in front of whatever board it is to see if they will convert all of this into withdrawals, a late withdrawal?" And so it turns it all into W's.
The University of Louisville would absolutely have done it.
Yeah.
Up until the day I graduated, they would have made it. Yes, they would have turned it all into withdrawals from. But I never asked.
And then obviously there's a little bit just visually here. There's a change where it's like, okay, I'm not pregnant anymore. There's a gap here. So your firstborn is a little bit older.
Yes.
And you can now focus on grades, which is great. And so we see this huge difference until we get to
Check the dates though. That was before. Yeah, so that was when I was young and lacked focus.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
I always hate how they put that stuff there. All right. So that's from before, which is great. And then post-bac work. So at what point in this journey were you like, I think I want to go to medical school?
Not yet. In 2017, I was preparing for my master's degree. So I needed anatomy and physiology and psychology and biochemistry.
Okay.
For that.
All right. Yeah. And so you have your graduate work here.
Yeah.
And so you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go get my graduate degree, master's degree.
I found genetic counseling. It felt like a perfect fit for me. I really love it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's, my understanding was a health science master's isn't really taken into too much consideration in the med school application process because it's not science coursework, it's applied stuff.
So you have your master's, good grades there. Going back later, some post-bac work later, which I'm assuming are kind of pre-med post-bac work.
That's just the one class I never picked up was intro physics.
Some upward trends that we see here. So just looking at grades, you have nice freshman year, and then sophomore year and junior year kind of in the toilet, and then picked up wonderfully with post-bac work. And all of your graduate courses were listed as non-science, which is interesting because some of them look like science classes.
One of them was really very much just like embryology, and like let's see, I've got
like genetics. Like you probably could have marked some of those as science, but oh well.
Such a rule follower. They said health science. I didn't want to mess with it. Yeah, but they were very much genetics classes.
Okay. Very cool. All right. So we see this upward trend of your last 50 credits here from senior year and post-bac work at basically a 394. Mm-hmm. And then your graduate coursework here, one lower, another 50 credits at a 386. So you have 100 credits of coursework, of history, to show the medical school that you applied to, this is not me anymore. And if you want to take the time to ask me what happened here, I have a very good reason of what happened. So when you interviewed, how much did this come up?
Not at all. My interview was academically blind. So
okay. Awesome.
I was prepared to talk about it, but that was not what they wanted to ask about.
Yeah, awesome. Amazing. Because they looked at your application, and they knew based on their own kind of data that they collect as a school, and they're looking at the success of their students and students who come in with similar stories to this and similar stories to this, and they go, you're going to be just fine here. And so they offered you an interview, and they like to not bias the interviewers, and it's blind, which is awesome. And then this helps. Right? Grades are important. MCAT is important. And so there's no concern of your ability to do well on the boards because you crushed Psych-Soc, you crushed cars, you crushed Biochem. Slacker there in Chem Phys.
Fair. Now that I've taken it, I realized, wow, that really would have been clutch. That would have been super helpful.
This was pre-physics?
This is before I took physics, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been helpful. Yeah, slacker. All right. So stats potentially a concern from those early GPA numbers, but you did the work, and that's why we always talk about that upward trend to really help as I just graph it out here. You can kind of start, yours is basically this. You have that nice little dip in the middle, and the school's like, yeah, life happens sometimes, and we're okay with that. You put GRE on here. Why did you put GRE on here? Just because you could?
There was a box. I put it in.
Okay.
They asked. I said, oh, okay.
Okay. I took that. Yep. Okay. I have no idea about GRE scores, so I have no idea if those are good or not.
They're good.
Okay. That's potentially another reason to put them on there. Just another piece of evidence to show, hey, no concerns here. All right. And then we get into, okay, show me who you are as a person. Show me what you've been spending your time with during these years. And so first one here is not medical clinical and the Democratic Socialists of America.
Right. I was a little afraid that was going to come off as too radical.
And that's my question. Why put that on there?
I had a contact at the med school. Later I have to teach like one lecture there. Yep. So I contacted my contact because I knew he was on the admissions committee, and I asked about how that would be viewed. And he said, we're not here to say if you're the kind of person we want to hang out with. We want to know who you are, though. Like, we're not going to say you can't be a doctor because you have different politics than me.
Yeah.
But we like to see, what do you do with your time? Who are you? And I said, don't leave it out if it's important to you. And so I trusted him.
Oh, I love whoever that person is. Thank you for giving wonderful advice that not everyone would give you. Not everyone at medical schools will tell you that, because they'll be like, oh, our board is pretty conservative and they might not like that and blah, 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 right? You never know. And
so kind and generous with his time. I really appreciated his advice.
Yeah, that's awesome. So great job. Again, that's what I think the application is all about, showing what you've been doing with your time, showing what's important to you as a person, not trying to craft an application that's going to be like, oh, the med schools want to see this. So great job. And so looking at the description here, You have a group of 400 members looking to advance progressive policies such as Medicare for all, Green New Deal, blah, 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 blah. Right? And so what did you do here? You held 2 elected positions, and you talked about the impact that you're trying to have, which is wonderful. That's the goal of this process. So great job there. So big Bernie fan, I'm assuming.
Yeah. That was a great recruiting for DSA. Like, oh, better things are possible. Maybe. Just not.
Maybe. I'm trying. Oh, yes. All right. And then we get to some lecturer here at the School of Medicine, which is wonderful. Spending a little bit of time. Not a huge amount of time, but obviously a huge connection to the school itself. So you're like, yeah, I'm going to put that on there.
Well, also I really liked it. I waffled about the time. I've obviously spent a lot more. The 5 hours is about how long I've spent lecturing.
Yeah.
I've spent easily 3 times that preparing my lectures and updating them. But I just was uncomfortable with that. If anything might look like exaggeration. So I didn't want to put anything that looked exaggerated. And I like teaching. I'm really excited about it, getting better at it.
Yeah, and that's great. And so talking about being a lecturer, the class, look forward to meeting, talking to new medical students, and you're determined to keep practicing and improving, which is great. And then a little note here. I don't think you need to add a note like this, but it's perfectly fine if you have the space to do so. All right, another teaching assistant job at another school. So showing kind of, again, what you've been doing with your time, who you've been impacting. It's fun to see this anticipated hours stuff because that's new for this application cycle. And so I haven't actually looked at that yet. So that's fun to see on here. And then you talked about this interaction here, supervising a couple of their students. It potentially would have worked well to tell a little bit of a story of one of those students and how you impacted that one specific student, but focusing in here on just in general, right, what you're doing, the little reflection of impact there, which is great. Posters and presentations. So obviously crushing those, listing them just like that is perfectly fine. And then here is where you've been spending your time as a genetic counselor. Mm-hmm. And so you can see here 3 years basically full-time there, and then still working full-time as a genetic counselor over the application cycle. The listing it as medical clinical, perfectly fine. You're interacting with these patients and the parents, and this kind of not in the best situations typically, where babies come out and they may look a little bit different, and you're like, time for a referral to the genetic counselor to see what's going on here and have conversations with parents. As a parent of a child with some genetic differences, I'm very familiar with your world. And so, yeah, it's a great clinical experience that I think is underlooked as a career as well, which is awesome. Any interest in being a medical geneticist moving forward as a career?
That's very much what I'm interested in. Yeah.
Awesome. I've had a couple great ones on specialty stories and e-shadowing if you haven't listened.
No, at least Dr. Chow was, she's involved at UCI, and that's where I went to grad school. So I was so delighted to hear her come on.
Nice.
So I contacted somebody from that, Dr. Hurst. She works I think in Birmingham, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And she used to be a genetic counselor, and she said that on your podcast. And I said, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be her. So I called her, and she was also really lovely.
That's amazing. I love the enthusiasm of just reaching out, right? These physicians, I think a lot of times students, traditional students are so fearful. And you as a non-trad, you're interacting with these people all day, every day. And you're like, they're just people. I'm going to call them and say, hey, what's up?
Yeah, she was amazing and so generous with her time.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So good story here. You talked about the kind of what drew you to this and kind of why it was so impactful for you, why you were passionate about it. You talked a little bit about what you do which is wonderful. And then the interaction with patients and family members as well. So a little bit of the description, I think that's important. I think genetic counselor is one of those that a lot of people aren't sure. Like, what is that? What do they do?
I get it all the time.
Yeah, even physicians are like, "What do you mean, genetic counselor? I don't know what that is." Unless you're the one referring to genetic counselors, then you don't really know. And then I love the story here of going into Leo's mom and everything else. The one thing I'll just add, I always like to just tell people, like, put some quotes around the name the first time you use it, just to like, hey, this is a pseudonym. No worries here.
I realized afterwards, I'm like, oh, that wasn't that child's name, but they know that, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. It's better to remove all doubt. So the impact, the story here, all wonderful. That I think it's great. You have shadowing outside of medical genetics. That's interesting. Why outside versus inside?
Oh, well, I mean, I work so closely with the physicians in genetics that I didn't list those hours separately. I mean, I shadowed medical geneticists both as a student and I work so closely with them. I'm there with them most of their day. So I didn't count those.
That's the rule follower in you. You're like, I don't want to double dip. Yeah. And I think it's one of those jobs where I think it's perfectly fine to list those hours, just subtract them. So here you have 2,000 hours. Maybe you put 1,900 and 100 of those are shadowing.
Perhaps.
Right. So perfectly fine doing that. I think how you wrote it here makes it obvious that you do shadow as well, being a genetic counselor. So I think that's perfectly fine. So the, again, listing how you have it listed here, perfectly fine. It's great. Going back to 2017. So again, just for people watching, how these are listed is based on the start date here. So 2017, 2018, and then moving forward. So we get in here to food, not bombs, founding member. I think that's a good difference. Bombs probably don't taste very good to eat. Food is much better. And so you have this leadership role. So you potentially could have marked it as leadership as a founding member. No right or wrong there, which is great. Stressful for the rule follower that you can kind of do whatever you want. And then kind of, what are you doing, right? You're impacting a community that's a food desert, and being able to go bring them food, which is awesome. So great impact there. You have research dating back a few years. For you have stuff going back a ways. Where did you draw a line to go, oh, that's too old, or that's too small, or whatever?
High school. I didn't pick anything. I haven't been doing as much volunteering, working full time and having children, but when I had time, I did more. And there is I think one of the things I marked most meaningful, because it really fundamentally changed my perspective. It was a paradigm shift for me, was something that I did as a 19-year-old. And I debated making that most meaningful because it was so long ago. And I said, well, it was meaningful to me.
Yep.
That's what I want to talk about.
And that's the perfect reason to mark something as most meaningful. Doesn't matter how old it was, but if it's most meaningful to you. And high school is the general rule of thumb for the activity section, which is great. So you have some research on here as well. You have birth doula, amazing clinical experience. Yeah. And again, having nice little stories here to help the reader understand who you are, the impact you had, and why these were important for you. So great job just glancing at these. Look like wonderful stories that I'm like, yeah, I want to talk to this person. And that at the end of the day, that's the goal of this process. A baby wearer.
Yeah.
So here's this other thing, right? You're a founder of this thing. So I'm seeing a lot of self-starting mentality here of there's not a thing, I'm going to do it. Right? You're a founder of this baby wearers thing. You're a founding member of this food organization. Where's another one, even though it wasn't listed as it. Even this, right? This tells me that the Democratic Socialists of America, you are someone who wants to initiate change.
I'm a good logistics person. I think I'm a good person to get on board early. So even though I don't think neither Food Not Bombs chapter nor Baby Wears were really my idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was really happy to be like, I can solve your problems. I can make this work. Tell me what you want to do. We can do this.
Yeah.
And I'm yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're an ops person.
yeah.
Got it. And just seeing that come through is wonderful. So you have right, 3 other mothers. You're founding this thing. How to teach new parents how to safely and comfortably use wearable baby carriers. Right. So all of those wonderful baby carriers. And I think we've probably all seen like that's not how you're supposed to be wearing that. that baby does not look comfortable in there.
They're at risk for positional asphyxia, not to be like terrifying, but that's
Yeah. Awesome. So impacting the community in lots of different ways. So someone reading your application can get the idea, again, that you are passionate, that you are driven by impacting your community just from the types of things that you're putting on your application, but not just because you're putting them on the application, because you're doing them, right? Because that's just who you are. And then how you're writing about them as well, just in a nice, easy way, not trying to oversell like your ability for ops and how that's going to make you a better physician and all this other stuff, right? You're just telling your story here, which is wonderful.
Honestly, that was my favorite piece of advice that I got from you was don't try to sell yourself. And I said, oh, thank God.
It makes it so much easier, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. More teaching, tutoring, teaching assistant, teaching math from a while ago, which again, perfectly fine to put that on there. And then more volunteering, again, impacting the community, post Katrina, and kind of interesting as we're post Ian now, which was super devastating.
It shows how old I am.
Yeah. And so again, just impacting the community, being someone who's out there and interacting and not just kind of giving lip service, be like, oh, I want to impact the community as a physician. Like you've been impacting your community for many, many, many years, not to age you. And then hobbies. I love having hobbies on an application, which is wonderful. And so game enthusiast, aspiring crossword puzzle designer. I love it. And so one of the things when I see that on an application, the first thing I would go and look for is what's your favorite puzzle? And so over the years, you've amassed quite a collection of board games. None of them have earned my daily devotion like New York Times crossword puzzle, right? Boom, right there. So awesome. And that is just a way to connect with another human being. New York Times crossword puzzle is like the crossword puzzle that most people will do and talk about if they're puzzle enthusiasts. And so that's wonderful. And so you have a little puzzle of your own that you would like to do, which is great. And then going back even further, surgical center clinic escort. So this is interesting because you told me you weren't pre-med. Why were you doing these things?
People shouldn't be harassed when they're going to get abortions. They should feel free.
Yeah. Okay. So again, just impacting the community. So you, and this is way when Roe v. Wade was still a thing. And so still lots of issues around that, unfortunately. So showing who you are through your application, a lot of people would be concerned about putting this on here, putting the first one on there about the Democratic Socialists of America. I think at the end of the day, you made the decision, having a great conversation with whoever it was at the medical school, which is phenomenal, the advice that he gave you, just be yourself, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you just got to be yourself. And I look at your activities without even looking at your personal statement. I want to invite you for an interview because I see someone who's passionate. And that, I can't teach passion, right? That's the one thing I can't teach. It's something that draws me to people. Like the people that I surround myself with at work, the people that we hire, they are passionate about something, and then I can teach them what they need to know about being a pre-med. So, or the pre-med world so that they can go help other pre-meds. So I haven't even gotten to your personal statement yet. So we get to your personal statement, and we go right into a story, which is awesome. So you're meeting Anna and her parents, and a 3-year-old girl, 46, XY karyotype. So some people looking at this would be like, XY, that's normal, right? There's not 2, there's not 3, but if you go her parents, XY, that doesn't match up. So what's going on there? And so because gender and sex are very, very strange phenomenons. Have you listened to the Gonad series by Radiolab?
Yeah, I love it. I've even recommended it to some of my
so good.
more sciencey DSD team families.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so accurate, but it explains so much. Highly recommend.
I was listening to that. So for everyone, Radiolab, amazing podcast series from NPR, I think NPR, and they did a whole series called Gonads. This is like 6 or 7 episodes, whatever it was. And I'm listening to this. It was like 2 years ago maybe that it came out. I'm listening to it going, if they taught like this in medical school, I would have been brilliant, because that's just how I learn. I learn by listening, and just the production value of that was just phenomenal. And so it was huge. Random side topic there. And so again, you have this male karyotype for someone who obviously was phenotypically a female. And what's going on there? So you have this conversation, and you are interacting. And a very common thing here, you were stuck at some point based on your education, based on your knowledge, and it makes you want to go further down this path. So to me is the ultimate, like, why do you want to be a doctor? Well, because I'm in this world already and I can't do enough. Right? It's very common to see PAs, to see NPs have this same story of, I'm impacting people every day right now, but it's not enough. I want more. So it's great. So you keep going, right? Provide for a team of patients with the deep expertise of a physician, just understanding this journey. Again, for someone who reviews hundreds, if not thousands of these all the time now, personal statements, my biggest goal for you is to understand, do you know why you want to be a doctor? And just glancing at your personal statement, I'm already, yes, like this person knows. So you've done your job. And so it's interesting, this statement here, as I read it. Negativity stands out to me very quickly. And to me, this is a negative statement. Why did you make this statement?
Because this is also factored into my decision, is that how much our community needs more medical geneticists. It's been 3 years of me talking to med students, right, when I teach, and I say, have you considered medical genetics? And they're so lovely, and they say, oh, no, it's not for me. Yeah. And eventually I said, wow, well, why not me? Yeah. I want it, I can do it, and we need it. So that was a big part of my motivation, was that this is something that we really need, especially here, especially in Kentucky.
You have a diagnosis here. You're sitting down with the family to explain. Obviously, being able to comfort the parents and patient and whoever else is hard. And it's interesting. Again, a little bit of this negativity here, but it's your truth of like we don't have enough of us, so I'm knocking on the door. Like, let me in. I want to step in and help fill a void. So it's a bold statement to basically come in and go like, hey, I'm here to solve a problem, because you've been in this world, and I think it works for you because you're in this world already.
Yeah, and I realized that this was really where I was not following your advice, but I read so many personal statements that someone's basically entire life that they had always known they wanted to be a physician.
Yeah,
and that is just not me. Yeah. I've every job I've ever had. I like being helpful. And so they're like, oh, would you be happy doing anything else? Well, then don't be a physician. Well, I'd be happy doing nearly anything. For me, I'm just kind of happy.
Yeah. And that's why my advice doesn't fit for everyone, right? And again, I think it fits perfectly for you, this here, how you did it, kind of saying like right off the bat, you're basically telling the admissions committee, I want to be a medical geneticist, right? Take it or leave it. It works for you because you've been in this world for several years. You have your degree and all this stuff. It works for you. That's your story. That's your truth. And if the school didn't like it, they wouldn't have invited you for an interview. They wouldn't have accepted you. You give a little bit of generic stuff here, which I don't think is important. I think it's a distraction usually for like, this isn't you. This isn't your story. This is just in general. Here's this world of genetics.
So that was my brief. I am not married to medical genetics. I like medicine. I like all kinds of things. I'm not going to be sitting there bored in every class of genetics. I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. And the person reading it's like, BS, you want to be a medical geneticist. So that's okay. And again, I get to the end here and I'm just like, yes, like I already said I wanted to invite you for an interview, just looking at your activities. And so I think that's what has worked for you, is just being true to who you are, showing your passions and telling your story in a way that doesn't come across as overly selling, doesn't come across as trying to force some sort of narrative for the medical school specifically.
No, that was really excellent advice, and really, even though I didn't follow your narrative structure for my essay, I was like, I can just I can just answer the question. I don't have to go some sideways path of answering this question about why I would be a great physician. I can just say, why do I want to be a physician? It's this.
Yep.
It's because I want to know everything and I want to use that knowledge to help my community.